Welcome to the Live Courageously podcast show number 74. I'm your host, John Duffy, and Live Courageously has been the conscious theme of my life for the last 3 years since the beginning of the pandemic. Uh-oh. Uh, Having a little bit of a glitch. What's that glitch? All right, let's keep going. Boy, that was interesting. Always interesting with these shows. So let's try it again. So anyway, welcome to the Live Courageously podcast show, episode 74. I'm your host, John Duffy. Live Courageously has been the conscious theme of my life for the last 3 years since the pandemic in 2020. And it's been an unconscious theme for most of my life. Courage is resistance to fear, mastery of fear, not the absence of fear. There's something contagious about someone who is courageous. Today's show is with a very courageous and adventurous guest that I connected with online. And I'm very excited about having her share her inspiring story and have a conversation with her. Based in Colorado, Risa August is an author, a speaker, a Gestalt therapist, practitioner, and patient advocate for rare pituitary diseases. She's been sharing her story for the past 5 years, and most recently in her memoir, The Road Unpaved, Border to Border with a Brain Tumor and a Bike. What an amazing title. I love that. In addition to speaking at conferences for leaders in pharmaceuticals, medical professionals, and patients, her work is published on blogs and in other smaller publications. Her most popular personal essay, Marshmallow Clouds, has been translated into Spanish. And through her personal transformation, Risa has learned and practiced removing limiting beliefs, shifting her perspective, and embracing a full life. She has a BA in geography, a certification in Gestalt Coaching Methods, and a certificate in mindfulness-based cognitive therapy. She's been living with a pituitary tumor and a rare disease for over a decade and offers words of inspiration and information to audiences in hope of saving others from heading down a bumpier road. A girl with sparkles in her hair, and once an Ironman athlete, Risa has a passion for her bike and barbells. With a genuine curiosity and love for trying new and old things, you may find Risa taking on Bollywood or hip-hop dance lessons, trying a silk aerialist, or boxing classes, going indoors, skydiving, or guiding an inspirational workshop on creativity, or even joining us on the Live Courageously podcast show. So welcome to the show, and thank you so much for joining us.
Oh my God, I'm so grateful to be here. Thank you, John.
Wow, you got a great story, and I mean, there's so much I want to talk to you about, and I will. And but I'll start out with a question that I like to always ask my guests, and this is going to be one that you're going to have to find a way to keep short, I guess. But what does Live Courageously mean to you? Because you clearly have.
Oh my goodness. Oh, okay. If I have to make it short, I'll say.
Well, not too short. I'm just saying you have a lot to say on it, so feel free to take it any way you want. Really, honestly.
Oh well, my editor knows I tend to be wordy, so I'll try to rein it in here. For me, it really meant stepping into who I truly want to be in this life and empowering myself to make that decision, letting go of all the shoulds and, what I'm told I should do, or, even limiting beliefs telling me what I can't do. It's putting all that aside and really stepping into the life I want to live for me.
And we're going to jump a little ahead, but I will go back to it, but that wasn't necessarily a decision you made earlier on. You made it in the face of a crisis or in the face of a challenge, whatever the word we want to use is in your life, that got you to kind of pivot in a different direction. Is that correct? I mean, is that when you kind of came across that you needed to live that new life?
Absolutely. Absolutely. And would you like me to talk about that moment?
Well, let's go back because the audience doesn't have a chance to know you, and I know you a little bit from reading some of your book and just being blown away by it. And I'll speak more about that as well. but tell us your early life, because both just normal, you as a normal young woman, and then Ironman. Wow, I mean that in itself is courageous, in my opinion. But what led you from a normal life to an Ironman and doing that? Your career. Just tell us the stuff before you ended up with the situation that once again took you in a new direction.
Oh, this isn't a short answer either, John.
No, not at all. Not at all.
My gosh. Well, I grew up in a suburb of Cleveland, and I was always pretty driven in life, but it was never enough. Like I would get to a certain point, and then I needed to get to the next point, beyond that. And that's kind of how my triathlon started. I started in the sprint distance, but I had to get to the Ironman, the full distance. And so everything just kind of builds from one goal and then just kind of builds on itself for me. But I was very rigid in the way I did things, very particular. I'd probably say over the top. Very intense, I guess, in the things I did in my life.
Now, why do you think, if you know the answer, why were you driven? What was it in your personality or your life that one made you driven? And then my second question is, for the audience who may not know, doing an Ironman is at the peak of what you were saying. Explain what that is to people. But let's start with, why do you think you were such a driven person growing up? What caused that in you?
Oh my gosh, you're killing me with these questions.
Well, wait, you're into Gestalt, so it's only fair that we go deep into some of this stuff.
That's fair. I could probably say some of it was my childhood growing up. I lived, my parents were divorced, and my brother and I were often left on our own to take care of ourselves. And, I think, if we were to look at it psychologically, I had to learn to take care of myself at a very young age. And so I was determined, let's just say I was determined. So very determined as a youngster. And I think that just carried on into my adult life.
And what age were you when you kind of started getting, so athletic, and then decide to take it to the next level of participating in an Ironman race? And what was that like, the training for that, the psychological commitment to that, to be able to achieve that? Because that's not easy. I mean, it's not like everybody can do that or even would choose to do that.
Right. It was actually in my 20s. I went back to school, and so I was actually lifeguarding part-time. And I saw a guy training in the pool for something. I didn't know what he was training for. And I just asked him. He's like, "Do you swim? Do you run?" He's like, "Get yourself a bike and do a triathlon." And I was like, okay. So, and I kind of had a crush on him too. So I was like, okay. And so I did my first sprint, and it was very klutzy and non-graceful, but I finished, and I was, oh my gosh, it was the best feeling ever. And from that point on, I was hooked.
And what age were you again?
I was in my late 20s. So 28 maybe. Yeah. And and then it evolved from there. And I saw the Ironman distance, which is, for those of you who don't know, it's if I remember, 2.6 mile swim, 112 mile bike, and a marathon run. And I remember thinking, oh, I could never do that. I'll never be able to do that. But then the next season I was doing the Olympic distance, which was one level up or longer distance than the sprint. And then I moved my way up to a half Ironman. Oh my gosh, half
Wow.
Ironman. And then before I knew it, I was training for a full Ironman. And I was like, I'm never going to limit myself again.
Wow.
And so, I ended up, my first one was in Arizona in 2010.
2010. And you said earlier that, you were rigid. And at the same time, obviously, I would think, not knowing, not having done any of that, but that, some of that rigidity helped because the discipline to be able to succeed in that endeavor took a lot of commitment to a rigid schedule. It wasn't like you could kind of do it or not do it some days, or do it now and then not do it, right? So it may not have served you in other parts of your life, but it definitely probably served you in that part of your life.
Oh my God.
Am I true with that guess?
Oh, yes, indeed. I remember I was on I think it was like an 18 or 19-mile run. It's pouring down rain. It's cold. And I just stop and I'm like bawling in the rain. And I'm just like, why am I doing this? And then I didn't need to wipe my tears because it was pouring rain. But then I just started running again.
Wow. I would have asked that question a lot sooner than in the middle of it personally. But why am I doing this? So you did the first one in 2010. And then, so that's 14 years ago. So how many did you do? Is it an annual thing that you did annually, and of course you have to train all year round. Is that correct?
Pretty much, pretty close. Yep. And I actually wanted nothing to do with biking or swimming or running again for a while. I ended up taking up CrossFit. Like I got really into CrossFit. And then it wasn't until 7 years later when I did my next Ironman.
Oh, wow. Now, CrossFit itself is kind of, I haven't not done it. I've obviously read about it. I work out 7 days a week in the gym, but I've never done CrossFit. But I think that's a pretty rigid workout system as well, correct?
Yes, very rigid, very intense. So it was right up my alley.
And so you did, and how often would you do CrossFit?
Oh, I would go 6 days a week because the gym was only open 6 days a week.
So the commitment was you did it 6 days a week. And once again, it is a pretty, for no one who's seen it, they can, read about it, but it's a pretty disciplined commitment with a lot of like, you have to do this, you have to do that, you have to do a lot of regimentation of the workout, correct?
Correct. Yes. Yeah.
And so two things with that, I guess. One, what do you think you got out of that in life, having that kind of daily regiment, that daily commitment? What was the positive and what was the negative? There was a negative to it, in being so committed to something like that.
Yes. Well, I went on to start my own wedding and event planning business that was extremely successful. And so I feel like kind of the rigidity of being organized and detailed and having all my ducks in a row was extremely helpful for that, and having a business mind. I also, it's, sorry, I'm losing my thought here.
That's okay. I'll just kind of, I was just asking, what did it do to serve you on a positive level, that this physical discipline of CrossFit, for example, and then if there was a negative or negatives, what would they have been in your life? So what was the pluses and minuses? That was the question to help.
Thank you. Yeah. Thanks for repeating that. Yeah. And so, so anything I set out to do, I feel like I could say this with 100% truth. I accomplished anything I ever set out to do, any kind of goal, not just physical, I accomplished it because I was very rigid and driven and determined. On the flip side of that, I think I missed out on a lot of amazing things that I'm now discovering, at this stage. But, having to stick to a workout schedule, or wanting to, get a project completed. I have a hard time walking away from projects, so, or wanting something done so perfectly. And so I'd go over and over and over it a million times. And so I think sometimes I was missing out on what was going on around me.
Did you ever, in that, you say you always succeeded, which is what you were driven, and you always achieved the goal that you set as success of that particular activity. When you did achieve it, did you take time to celebrate, or enjoy the fact that you succeeded, or did you kind of push on to a new goal and just feel like, okay, next, or did you actually take the time and say, well, I mean, I did it, let me celebrate this achievement on my part?
I might have given myself 2 or 3 days to celebrate.
Okay, that's better than none.
Yeah, but then I was always looking for the next thing.
Looking for the next thing.
Yeah.
And what gave you the, in your opinion, the entrepreneurial drive to start a business as opposed to be an employee? What in you, made you go down that path to say, let me open up this wedding planning business, let me be an entrepreneur? Because entrepreneurship obviously takes commitment, time, energy, all those things that you have with the discipline, but you also made a choice to go down that path as opposed to the employee path. Why?
Well, I definitely had the help of a life coach, which was amazing.
Okay.
And I mean, like one day I just went in and quit my job. I was being underpaid, doing work I was overqualified for. And I don't think my life coach expected me to walk into my job one day and just quit. She certainly didn't tell me to, but I started noticing the skills I did have, the things I was really good at. I don't think I ever acknowledged them before. And organizing and details, I was incredible at. And I had a friend who asked me to actually bake her a cake for her wedding, but I ended up coordinating the entire thing. And I was like, oh my gosh, I'm really good at this. And so I started my own wedding and event planning company, and it really flourished. And then I eventually, kind of burned out of that after about 7 years, but I got a taste of working for myself.
And would you classify yourself as a overachiever? Would you use that word? I'm just asking.
Yeah, I guess so.
Not that that's a bad thing. It's not it's just one of those things that isn't necessarily bad or good. It can, like all these things, right? In life, something can be both good and bad. It has positives, a lot of positives, and then it can have some negatives, right? So that's it. It isn't bad to be an overachiever. At the same time, maybe there's a little negatives in it, and at times, and so it's like understanding what they are. And we'll go into that, because we're going to go into, we'll call it U 2.0, maybe, as you kind of like went through, and not by choice, but we're going to get there in a minute. But yeah, I would say that's it, probably, maybe, when you're doing all these things, it's who you are, it's what you're doing.
Yeah, and I can own the good and bad sides of overachieving. Like, I certainly can own that.
Yeah, and to accomplish certain things, you have to be an overachiever, because you don't get that objective, you don't achieve it if you're not, right? So if you don't, because if you quit too soon, you don't get that goal. So having to have that level of commitment takes you there, and you clearly have had that in both your business entrepreneurial efforts and then also in your physical efforts. So All right, I'm going to pivot. I'm going to shift because there's so much to cover in so little time. So, you somewhere in the middle of CrossFit, in the middle of going back to doing the Ironman, you started to experience you're top athlete, you're totally in shape, you're healthy as can be. You started to experience things that you didn't know what they were, and start the story there. What started to occur in your life that was unexpected, and how it started to affect you. And let's go down that road to that story.
Okay. Yeah. Well, it actually started a year after my first Ironman. So in 2011, a friend invited me to do a 500-mile bike tour with her, and I was all in. But I started noticing like extreme weight gain and like just my workouts weren't feeling the same. Like I was struggling to recover, and I was like bonking pretty easily. Like I couldn't get my nutrition quite right, and so it felt very different than all the years before. But I couldn't put a finger on it, and I went to see several doctors, and I said, can you look at my thyroid? Can you look at this? And they're like, no, blood work's fine, nothing to worry about, you're fine. And so fast forward to my second Ironman, 2017, I was really struggling to get through the training for that. And I barely finished the race. And I was struggling again, like even worse with recovery, weight gain, pain in my body. And I remember looking at my husband at the time. I was on the run, and I'm like, I might not finish. And he was like, okay. And I'm like, you don't understand. This isn't an option for me. But it feels like I might not finish. And I did. I made it. I got across that finish line. Awesome feeling. But then following that Ironman, I couldn't get off the couch. I thought I had adrenal fatigue. I was looking at the HPA axis. I was having severe headaches. Again, I kept being dismissed, like, oh, you're overtraining, you're not drinking enough water, you're an athlete, we're not worried. I'm like, I'm 40 pounds heavier than I was, like, but I eat very strict, I'm very fit, like, I don't understand. Nope, you're fine, we're not worried. And so about a year went by, and I finally went back to my doctor. I'm like, something's wrong. I'm barely sleeping 2 hours a night because my headaches are so severe. And, and she's like, well, take some ibuprofen, drink more water, and maybe, pull back on your training. Your blood work's fine. I'm like, can you test my thyroid again? No, you're fine. You're fine. I said, well, can I have an MRI? And she said, no. She said, no. And I said, well, I'd like to rule things out, peace of mind. No, I'm not worried. You're an athlete. And besides, they're really expensive. And I sat there quietly. I think it must have been some kind of divine intervention. And I felt like I used my voice for the first time. And I said, please order me the MRI.
Wow.
And a week later, I got one sentence saying, you have an enlarged pituitary, go see an endocrinologist. I had no idea what an endocrinologist was. No idea. But a week after that, I'm sitting in the endocrinologist's office. I'm looking at my skull on the screen, this big gray blob between my eyeballs. And she's like, this needs to come out. And I'm like, hold up.
I'm going to stop you and go back a little bit before we go forward, because here's a picture of the book, by the way, The Road Unpaved, border to border with a brain tumor and a bike. And there's a chapter in the beginning of the book that you describe that what you just mentioned with that doctor, that experience where I just recommend everybody read that. It is such a well-written, powerful chapter about how you all the steps you went through in that. I was just kind of blown away reading it. But to step back a second, then we're going to go back to that. All those doctors that you, or just not all, but the doctors that you dealt with who kind of dismissed it, what was your, or is your takeaway from that? Because, here they obviously came from a standpoint that, well, if it doesn't show up, therefore it doesn't exist, kind of, and we're doctors and we know, because we know better than you, because you're a non-doctor civilian. So why would you know what's going on? And yet they were wrong and you were right. And they didn't want to go further than just to dismiss it until your voice got stronger and you said, like you said, you spoke up and then you requested that. And you could have not requested it, and you could not have got that result if you didn't have the bravery to speak up. And speaking up to doctors sometimes is hard because they, come across as like, don't ask us questions. We know more than you. We're smarter than you.
Yeah.
But they're not.
They don't have the time. Yeah.
Or they don't have the time yet. But they don't, at the end of the day, know everything. And even when they think they know everything, they don't. They're humans. And they have limited knowledge just like any other human. So they may be right, they may be wrong. But go ahead. So you did that. You had the courage, and that's a form of courage to be able to, stand up to a doctor and tell them, I need this. And I think sometimes people need to hear that message. That's one message from you that I think people need. When people know when something's going wrong, they have to request, push the doctor and not let the doctor push them.
Yes, absolutely. And I trust me, I would have loved it if that MRI came back clean.
Oh, I bet.
But what I've learned is I want to rule it out, and so I've become a little bit of a nightmare for doctors.
Well, I think personally, I have a story with a dear friend. Her roommate had a brain tumor just recently, and she pushed because she had cancer too. She started pushing the doctors to give him this new treatment to reduce the size of the tumor before an operation. And they refused to do it. And finally, she wouldn't take no for an answer. And she used another doctor to pressure the doctors. And they finally did it. And they gave him 2 shots of this treatment, which shrunk the tumor. And all of a sudden, when they cut. So once again, if she didn't push, they kept saying, like you, well, it's too expensive. We don't need to do this. Just let's do an operation. It'll be fine. And they were wrong. They just were wrong. And, so it's people got to hear that message that, you got to stand and have a powerful voice for yourself and your own health. Because at the end of the day, it's your life, not theirs.
Yes.
Because they can walk away and it's just a statistic. You can't walk away. It's your life.
Exactly. And that's what I did. I educated myself as much as I could. I talked to people. I researched. I asked questions. Yep. Be your own advocate.
So you did. And then, and like I said, there's a chapter in the book and we're going to talk about, we'll get into the book and use the book to kind of weave into the story. But before we get into what happened in that doctor's office, because I want you to share that, because it is so many layers. I took a bunch of notes on it because I was just blown away by some of the writing in it as well. But before we do that, we're going to go forward a little bit and come back. When did you decide to write the book? What period did that come up for you to write this book?
Yes. Well, a book was always brewing, but it kind of evolved after I decided to ride my bike from Canada to Mexico.
A very small little event, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
How many miles can you tell the audience how many miles and how long that was? I mean, they can read it in the book, and I highly recommend everybody go on Amazon and get this book. But tell us, how many miles and how long did it take?
Sure. It was 1,845 miles, and it took 41 days with 4 rest days.
Yikes. I mean, I wouldn't want to even drive for 41 days. not alone. But and once again, I just started to get into that part of it in the book, the actual, when you first started that ride, and like I said, but such a commitment. But now let's just jump back and just like when you're in the office with the endocrinologist and she tells you what the diagnosis is, and it's not a simple diagnosis, it's complex because and you weren't kind of prepared for, like you said, you would have wished it was nothing. Of course. Tell us a little bit about that because it's such a life-changing moment on so many levels because there was layers to that you handled in that visit. Tell us a little bit about that.
Yes. Well, first of all, it was surreal. I didn't have time for this. I don't think she's talking to the right person. And so she first tells me, yeah, this big gray blob between your eyeballs has to come out. And I'm like, and like it just wasn't sinking in. I wasn't getting it. And so I'm like, well, what do you mean? Like brain surgery? And she's like, yeah. And I'm like, what? And then she's like, and furthermore, I also believe I know what you have. And I'm like, what do you mean what I have? I have a tumor. And she's like, well, and you have this rare disease that is a result of the tumor.
Wow.
And so she was doing all these tests with me and she's like, tells me the name of it. And she's like, it's called acromegaly. And I'm like, what? Seriously, I'm like, what the heck kind of name is that? I couldn't even pronounce it. It took me several tries. And so I said, I'm getting a little emotional here. But she said, I said, you mean to tell me like this is the reason, all the stuff that's been happening in my body, all the things, going on, or that this is the cause of that? And she said, yes. And I just remember in that moment, like it's almost like as if everything around me disappeared. And I'm like, I'm not crazy. Like, so all those years of doctors not listening to me and people thinking I was probably eating too much ice cream and potato chips and I'm not crazy. And she just looked me square in the eye and she's like, Risa, you are not crazy. And I just started bawling. Like, it was like that validation in that moment was like the only thing that mattered. I wasn't thinking about the surgery or what needed to happen next. I was just like, finally someone hears me. It gets me every time.
Yeah, I'm kind of like, I don't want to even say anything to you. It's just like, it's such a powerful moment because in the book, you do it too. And it's just that acknowledgement that you're not crazy and getting that from the doctor and realizing that all you're suffering through is real. And that is a powerful moment. It's such a powerful moment. And reading it too was just so powerful for me reading it. So thank you for sharing. And I know it's always hard to go back into those places of somewhat pain and emotion to kind of like bring them out. But thank you for sharing it with us.
Yeah.
But yeah, but that probably lifted a big weight off your shoulder, and of course didn't lift the whole weight because the whole weight continued to be. Now you had to deal with the next stuff, but you at least had that weight removed, that you weren't crazy, that it wasn't you. Now you had to deal with the reality of what it was, but now you knew for once what it was. You didn't know previously. You just knew that something was messing with your body really bad. And, now you got maybe a path to dealing with it somehow. So take us a little bit further on the story with that.
Sure. Yeah. So now I had the answer and I'm just like, oh, finally there was relief with that. I'll just research the heck out of this, figure it out, get myself all, whatever needs to happen and get on with my life.
Of course, you'll solve it.
Yeah. I mean, and I remember I had an appointment with the neurosurgeon a week later. This was kind of happening quickly, and my surgery was scheduled for January 2019. And I'm like, okay, well, I have a 250-mile bike ride in March. And he's looking at me like, and we're going to have to cancel that. And I was like, he doesn't know who he's talking to. And I was like, well, I'll show him. But the hard truth was I quickly learned that I would never be the same again. And that bike ride didn't happen. It didn't happen that year, but it happened the next.
And we're going to get to that. But, that what you just said, he didn't know who he was talking to. There's so much in that. There's so many layers in that. But, one of the layers I hear is, yes, you didn't get to do that bike ride, but he didn't know who he was talking to because you had a certain mindset, a certain will. That was a sense of determination that you were going to get through this and do what you had to do. And that's such a, sometimes I don't think people realize how powerful that is in the healing process as at least a contributor. It can't answer every question. It can't solve every health problem. But when you have that attitude, it just gives it affects your body too, because your mind is giving it like, I'm going to get over this. I'm going to fight. You're going to do it. And, it may not be able to do 100% miracle, but it doesn't hurt to have that attitude. It really doesn't.
Yeah. Yeah. I like that part of me for sure.
Yeah. And it's one that I think we can all learn and adopt in life, because it's that never quit, never give up stuff that we need, especially when we're hit with things that we don't want to be hit with, or challenges like you or things like that. Having that attitude allows you to put up the fight, where without it, you don't put up the fight and you give in to that, whatever it is. And that never has a great outcome. I think that's just my bias, but so you did that. So you didn't go, and then you did the surgery. So take us through that path. And we got a little more time because I want to get into. There's so much. I'm going. Oh God, I'm running out of time with you. But do that, and then we'll take us to the next stage.
Okay. Yeah. So I had surgery, and the neurosurgeon said it was promising, but we had to wait 3 months for everything to heal. And we were looking at hormone levels now. And I won't get into all of that, but couldn't get the entire tumor. The rest of it's wrapped around my carotid artery and too close to my optic nerve. So I was looking at radiation treatment in hopes it would shrink the tumor away eventually, or medication for the rest of my life. And you're talking to an extremely healthy person who didn't even take ibuprofen. And now I'm faced with picking my poison. And that was a hard decision. And I thought, well, I don't want to be on medication for the rest of my life. So I'm willing to take the chance with radiation treatment and hope that it doesn't have any long-term side effects. And so that's the route I chose. Sadly, it doesn't appear to be working. So I'm now also on medications. I'm on my 5th medication and still on that journey. But with that said, I was sitting on my couch one day in these tattered gray sweatpants I'd been wearing what feels like for 2 years. And I just remember thinking, okay, I'm getting a little emotional again, but I remember thinking I need something to live for. like this can't be my life. And so that's when I decided I was going to ride my bike from Canada to Mexico.
And there's just a quote I'm going to throw up from you. This is, there's life after diagnosis, and only the individual gets to choose how they want to move forward with it. I mean, that's a pretty powerful statement. So now you just make a decision, and now you're going to go do this. I guess some people would say crazy, a journey in the midst of all this, or other people would say an amazing, empowering one, or maybe a little bit of both, right? But you made that decision, and tell us about that, because that took you on a new path. And that's like, all of this is in the book, and reading is just so powerful to read, and then to hear it from you is even more powerful. But take us a little bit into that. So the decision's made, how do you go about it? And then I want to talk about when you first started it, because that chapter is just hilarious. But take us down that road.
Yeah. So now I had this commitment, this goal, and it took me several months to get back on my bike. I could barely get to the mailbox and back. And so I actually took up painting as a healing kind of therapeutic, because I'm thinking I need to do something. And so I took up painting, and then it eventually turned into walks to the mailbox, which eventually turned into taking my dog for a mile walk. And then the day came where I got on my bike, and that's Coda and Sequoia there. And I remember the first ride, I'm like, you're talking to someone who a 65-mile day was just a great day to be out on my bike. And so I'm thinking, maybe I'll try 15, 20 miles. My first day was 8 miles. It may have been 65 or even 100 at that. It was a hard day, but it was the first day. And then it just, from there, I just built upon that. It's like maybe riding 2 days a week, and then it turned into 3 and 4 days a week. And then I was doing trainer rides and training, and then that eventually turned into an 1,800-mile bike ride down the coast.
Yeah, once again, I'm just 1,800 miles from Canada to Mexico. How many days again?
41 days.
41 days. And you went with a group, and you share that story in the book. And just the beginning of it, I guess your honesty and being just so real comes out in the writing, just comes out, because you're going with a group, and yet the individualist overachiever that you are, you don't want to be part of the group. You want to do it by yourself. So you're like, you got this struggle going on because you want to do it. And at the same time, you don't want to be around a group of people. You kind of want to do it because it's your decision to overcome what you're dealing with, which is unique and special to you. So you have this conflict going on as you go on this incredible journey. Tell us about that, because I mean, the way you write about it, like I said, is hilarious. The way you describe the people and the nicknames you give to them, it's hilarious. People need to definitely read the book. But take us on that journey.
Sure. Yeah, it was supposed to be a soul healing journey for me, but I saw this tour that it's called semi-supported, where they transport your gear from, point A to point B each day, but they don't provide any other support than that. And so I was like, okay, great. Because now I was looking at complicated medications, and I not trusting my body and not sure what it was capable of anymore. And so it was almost like, okay, I have this emergency backup, and so I'm going to simplify this tour by signing on and having a van transport my gear, and then I can just ride on my own, and it can be very soul healing for me. And I quickly learned that wasn't how it was going to be at all. and yes, I was fighting that for a little while, and I don't want to give away too much.
No, I don't want you to either. I just say, you got to read the book. You got to read just the setup of that chapter and the personalities. And I'm not going to get into all of it, but it was just, you could see how that was going to clash easily with you, and how you described all of it and going on. So yeah, you definitely need to read the book. But take us to what you can tell us about it, not getting into the details, not getting into that, but what was the outcome? What was the accomplishment? What did it do for your life? Take us to whatever you want to share about this as you went through that incredible, that ride.
Oh gosh, emotional again. So
that's okay.
I learned what I was capable of, and again, another wake-up call of not allowing limiting beliefs or anyone outside of me tell me what I can and can't do, or what I should or shouldn't do. And I also learned, gosh, talk about strength training and stuff. I strengthened my mindset to be one of looking at the world, instead of seeing obstacles, I now see possibilities. And then lastly, finding connection in some of the most unlikely places, and how important it is to receive support and appreciate it. So, and that's another tough question, because I feel like I got so much out of that journey.
Well, how could you not? Because there was so many layers to it besides, right? Like you said, the physical, but then the mindset, and then having to deal with people when part of you didn't want to, and then learning how to connect, and all the layers of that experience, and then drawing the conclusions about overcoming limitations and overcoming and limiting beliefs, and taking all those things as takeaways from this experience, which just kind of strengthen you in life. And I think that's the other lesson I get from what I read of so far of your story, is just for people to realize that it's by putting yourself through stuff you get stronger, not by avoiding stuff. You can't get stronger by avoiding stuff. You just can't. Whatever the stuff is, whether it's physical, mental, or relationship, or whatever, it's only by going through stuff that you get stronger. You don't get stronger by avoiding it. That's just not a way to live life. And you also don't get to live a bigger life. You live a smaller life. So you went on a journey that made for a more adventurous life, from what I could see, and just challenged you on so many levels.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So
yeah, it opened me up to so much. Yeah.
And then you come away from that, you accomplished that, an amazing accomplishment. Once again, I hope you gave yourself at least those 3 days of celebration, if not more, for that one, because you clearly deserve more. But then, you went on to say, to open up and become, to live bigger, make a bigger impact in the world with your book, with your speaking, with your, going around and telling people and helping people with similar health issues, and then doing all that. So tell us a little bit about that the aftermath of that led to the opening and the widening of who you are and what role you're playing in the world today.
Yes. Well, I kind of accidentally became a patient advocate. My story got attention, and so I started contracting with pharmaceutical companies and also nonprofit organizations like Pituitary World News. And because it's believed that these tumors aren't rare, they're just very hard to diagnose. And I was like, man, if I can save one person, like if I can get earlier diagnosis for someone, that can make all the difference. They can have a very different possible fate than I have. They can potentially go on to live a fairly normal life. So that became a real drive for me. And although initially I was so angry with the medical field, medical professionals, a wise man told me, hey, we need to partner with these people because we all want the same outcome. And so that really sunk in for me. And so I started, connecting with the medical field and, like I said, the pharmaceutical companies, and trying to bring attention to this. And then I just learned this whole experience changed me. I'm a better human, and life is so incredible if you open up to it. And so I think that's where that's where my Gestalt coaching comes in, and is helping people realize their potential and what is possible.
Yeah, I'm gonna throw up a couple of quotes from you. This one, we often create our own constraints, our own limits, but what happens when you remove those limiting thoughts and instead believe that anything is possible? Very powerful, very, very well put. And then the other one, which I have, I think is also an excellent message to everybody from you, which is this one: friendly reminder, time is now. And, just both of those, realizing that, you don't know what the time is. I met a veteran last night at an event, and, he told me he had a heart attack and he survived it. And the doctor told him, when he was, ready to leave, the doctor said, I don't know how you survived. You should have died. I have no understanding as to why you're standing here alive. He said, now get out of here and go change the world. And I mean, I was like, whoa, and I knew I was going to be doing this show. And then I hear that message and I'm like, yeah, talk about, bookending, and that's what he's doing now. He's out there, and he said, I'll do anything for anybody. My purpose is to change the world, because he said I should have been dead. And so we never know. And like you said, the time, once again, friendly reminder, the time is now. And so that's for all of us, to realize the moments that we have, what we can do. And, you're doing that. So tell me a little bit more. Obviously, you're, besides partnering with the medical, and I like that, that wise person who told you that, and that you chose to do that, because that is very true. They need help, and they need somebody who has a different perspective. And, why not share it and make it better for everybody? So that was a very cool thing to say too. And what else are you doing now? What other journeys are you on? Both speaking, obviously doing podcasts, sharing the message as widely as possible. And so tell us a little bit about your journey right now.
Yeah, so I'm doing everything I can, to promote my message and genuinely, hopefully save some lives here. And I too I come from such a genuine place that I truly do want to inspire others, motivate others to live their best life. And so I'm doing a lot of that, and the speaking and interviewing, and then I'm also spreading joy. I recently had an article published in Woman's World about a side gig I do, sparkling hair. And it's basically, I have my hair up today. You can see some of the sparkles, but
where's the picture of you? But I don't know if you have any sparkles in this picture, but so sparkling hair, that's cool.
Yes, and it really does bring so much joy to people. And so, my goal is to live my best life. And if I can impact other people in a positive way while I'm doing it, heck yeah.
Well, you've also gotten, some acknowledgement for what you're doing. I know you got this Global Women of Choice Award. And so, your messages, that you're sharing is touching people. And that's a very cool thing. I mean, it's a great picture. I just got to share this, but this celebrates, let's talk about joy. If that picture don't capture joy, I don't know what does. So, being willing to share that message and taking it out to inspire other people to, overcome their limitations, but live with joy, not appreciate the moments that we're given. So let me see what else let me just put up, this is, your contact information. Obviously, you're online, Instagram, Facebook and LinkedIn, and also Substack, so people can reach you on all these places online. And then of course, if they want, they got to, go to Amazon, and I think they should, and pick up this book, because it's an excellent book, and I can't wait to read it, because I've written 2 memoirs. I haven't got them published yet. I'm working on them, but I love the writing in the book. I love the, just the way you handle language. I struggle more with that, but I really think your book is, people will have not only be inspired, but they'll enjoy it. They'll enjoy the story and the way you share it. So I hope everybody gets a chance to pick up the book and read it, because it's going to impact them if they do.
And can I brag a little bit?
100%, please. 100%.
My book has won 3 awards since its release, and so I'm very excited about that.
That's cool. Well, once again, when you do something with a bigger purpose, I think it kind of has a ripple effect, and winning awards is one part of it, but you came at it to serve a purpose, and that's why I think it's being acknowledged. So congratulations to you on that. What would let me just see where we are. We're getting close. We got a little more time, but anything else you would like to share, wrap up? I know we didn't get to get into the whole Gestalt therapy thing, but once again, that's a form of helping people overcome their issues, their limitations, their beliefs. More cognitive therapy. Once again, some of that your experience on that to help people, deal with issues in their life to be able to overcome them. And so that's another part that you're playing. We won't have a chance to dive deep into it, but it is something that you do and that you impact the world with as well. So what else would you like to sum up with that I haven't covered, or I haven't got to for you, or, the path forward, or any of that stuff?
Yes. Well, again, if something feels off in your body, or your gut's telling you something, go with it. Go with it. Ask questions. Use your voice, and do whatever you can to until you get the answers you want. And then on the other side, don't limit yourself in life. Every moment we come to, ask yourself, what can I do? What am I capable and able to do now in this moment? And you might surprise yourself. So, and, I ask myself in that in every moment, what can I do in this moment when life feels hard, or when I feel like I can't do more? Well, what can I do? And then that leads to the next thing, and that leads to the next thing. And then the next thing, you're riding 1,800 miles down the coast.
Maybe, maybe, but I love that, because, what you're saying is asking yourself empowering questions take you to a empowered place. So if you ask yourself, what can I do? As opposed to, I can't do this, or having a limited question, or there's no way I can do this, or whatever. Instead of taking those beliefs, you ask those empowering questions. What could I do today? What could I do this week? What can I do? Each time it takes you to action that grows you as opposed to shrinks you. So, I think that is a great message to people, to always be asking that of themselves. What more can I do? How else can I help other people? Always asking those questions lead you to live a bigger, more joyful life, I think, than if you don't ask those questions. So, that's very cool. Very, very cool. Any other final thoughts for us? And it's been a pleasure. I've enjoyed it. I can't wait to finish reading your book. It's like I said, I recommend it highly. You'll love the story. You'll love the writing. You'll love the authentic nature of what you shared. So I recommend it highly.
Yeah. Yeah. Thank you so much for having me. I'm so grateful to be here. And yes, go out and find whatever is your 1,800-mile bike ride, whatever it is. No constraints. Live your life unleashed.
I love that. Your 1,800-mile bike ride. It's kind of like people say, "What's your Everest?" That's another way of putting it, right? That's your journey. That's a great way to sum it up. And yes, live your life unleashed. Thank you so much. It's been such a pleasure. I'm so glad that we had a chance to connect and then have you on the show. It's been a blessing. I appreciate it.
Me too. Thank you so much.
All right. Take care.
Bye-bye.
Bye. Well, everybody, I hope that today's show, Risa August, inspired you. And I know it inspired me, her message, her story. Pick up her book on Amazon and begin to, get inspired. Ask yourself those questions. Go on that, find your 1,800-mile journey, your bike ride, and begin to find a way to live life unleashed, live life bigger. And if you haven't watched the previous 73 podcasts with some of my courageous friends, you can always watch them on my YouTube channel, but also my upcoming webpage, which is live-courageously.com. And it's going live tomorrow, Monday. So join me there. There's going to be all my podcasts, all my newsletters, merchandise, things that we're doing to support organizations that are making a difference in the world. So please join me there. And until next week, Sunday at 3 p.m. Pacific Standard Time, may you make your life a masterpiece. See you then.